I have read before coming up here because I wanted to know a little bit story about Malta. And I found in a guides that there was a story about the St. Paul, that in the year 60 after the Christ was born, his ship has crashed on the coast of Malta. And he spent 3 months in Malta. And in that time, he managed to lay deep foundation for Christian faith in here. And probably you have seen so many churches in this island. Yeah? So in 3 months, he made it. So do we have such a faith in public health? Do we such a faith that leads to sacrifice? Because if we meet resistance, yeah, and we always meet, yeah, when we want to do something very well for public good, do we have such a faith to sacrifice our souls? Thank you very much.
There is time, like some 10 minutes for interaction with the audience, questions from the audience, and reactions from the 2 speakers. There will be, and there are roaming microphones, I guess. Who wants to start the discussion?
I'm Raj Bhopal from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. We can't have a discussion period without discussion. So, some points of this nature were also made yesterday, i.e. it's about translation of research. And I think it's a very important point, but it does raise quite interesting questions about how we educate and train people, and also about the interrelationship of roles. So someone said yesterday, well, a lot of the translation is done by civil servants working with government ministers. Researchers don't need to go to the minister directly. Indeed, getting an opportunity to meet the minister directly is going to be awkward anyway. Today we've had a view that all public health researchers should also be activists. I think it's a very interesting one, and it's certainly one it chimes with me. But I'm thinking to myself, as a professor of public health at the University of Edinburgh, involved in teaching and training for many years and often taught epidemiology, other than sort of in trying to inspire people to be active in implementing research, I haven't done anything. I haven't trained them. There must be a theory of knowledge on how to bring about change, and maybe our epidemiology courses or our statistics courses or indeed our health promotion courses need to teach people that theory about how to bring about change. And that is really change management, which is management. And I would say that in teaching of public health over the last 50 years, management has been squeezed out. There used to be management in public health MPH courses 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it's been squeezed out. What's happened is we've had more and more statistics, more and more quantitative sciences, and quite a bit of qualitative research. I think research methods have taken over masters in public health courses. The practice of public health has been largely squeezed out. I would like to hear other people's opinions, but that's my opinion. And if we're going to change to the kind of view that we've just heard from Gdansk, then I think that needs a considerable overhaul of our key courses like Masters of Public Health courses.
Thank you, Raj. I suggest that we probably start a discussion about this issue. It's a very important issue, the issue of how to get all our good ideas into practice. And I would first ask Lucas and Paul to react to that, and then probably give the floor back to the audience. Lucas, what's your opinion about this?
That's when I started to teach my students, and then I found that they used to think that everything will be easy. That everything, if they get the knowledge, yeah, if they get the science, and so people will accept it. And they found, no, it's quite hard. You have to stress yourself. You have to be very persistent, and that's what I started to change my way of thinking. And that I have to say them, it will not be easy. If you want to make a change, you have to sacrifice yourself. You have to do some more. You have to fight with your demotivation things and all those stuff. So So I think it's a good point that Paul has made here. Thank you.
I think it very much depends on individuals to some extent. I mean, lots of people will not want to get involved in that way and still do a very useful job in public health. So I think in some sense it's those people who got the characteristics and personality which enables them to fight causes. And they should certainly be given facilities which enable them to do so and training that help them to do these important tasks. I'm not sure everyone wants to do them or should be obliged to do them.
Would it be helpful to distinguish between individual motivation and institutional incentives? We talked a bit about that yesterday. When I have job interviews with young researchers, I tend to say that they should first of all be a good researcher, and that if they want to change the world, they should go in a different kind of career and not research. But that's my opinion, and I think you think different about this. I would like to hear other views from the audience on this.
My name is Ingrid Milbach. I'm from Austria, from the Social Security institutions. And I very much liked your presentation about doing it ourselves. And I think it's not just a question which or how it is done by organization or by ourselves. I think we all have the responsibility to live public health for our own, to be some kind of idol. And it's just easy. I observed in the hotels, and also in my hotel, I'm not staying here, but also here in the Hilton Hotel, most of our colleagues, for example, use the steps. It's very easy, yeah? But it's just to be an idol. I move when I can and when it's easy. And I did this for years in my organization, where I have the office in the 8th floor. And I used the steps. And first, you know, they smiled at me and said, well, yes. Mm-hmm. And now some people use steps more frequently. And I think it's a kind of implementing some responsibility of living it yourself and just do it. That's what I think. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So that's a plea for good environmental design, where you can really be an example in your own behavior. Other views about this issue? Yes, over there. Yep.
Some very interesting presentations this morning, and I should declare myself on one side or the other. I'm clearly from the activist.
Could you give your name?
Yes, my name is Tamsin Rose, and I define myself as a health activist, which clearly delineates where I am. But one of the points I wanted to say is the area I work in is Brussels, where we sit with the policymakers. And I would say we absolutely need quality research, hard evidence, and good data. That's essential to starting to make the arguments. But I just wanted to signal a warning that we can get ourselves closed into a box of assuming that if we put good evidence on the table, that will somehow win the argument with policymakers. And what we end up doing is getting caught in a war of evidence, whether it's on nutrition or alcohol, tobacco, where the industry-sponsored research is on one side of the table and public health research is on the other side, and the policymakers say, well, I don't know which evidence to believe, I'm not qualified. Or we have this other really interesting phenomena that comes from, that neuroscience can explain for us, which is we have a tendency to believe the evidence or the science or the arguments that fits best with our worldview. So even when we put evidence in front of people, that's still not enough to make a change. So I would urge us to think more broadly about this idea. The evidence is critical for good decision making, but it isn't the only thing that comes into play. A lot of it is to do with the attitudes and the social norms that exist in society, because those get anchored into the brains of our policymakers. And I remember having a conversation with an MEP who was involved in one of the largest pieces of legislation on food information. Now, she said, I'm a scientist and I understand the science, and I don't believe the science that you're putting in front of me about traffic lights on food. When you look at her background, she did agricultural science, and her scientific training is in veterinary science. But she felt qualified to judge and distinguish between them, and she therefore selected the evidence that had been put forward by the food industry. So this is the danger that I find for public health, is that we can find ourselves boxed in the corner as a source of evidence, but one source, not the only source, and not necessarily the best source. So my plea for you as public health researchers is remember that you have to make the case to the outside world. And there's a lot of people with passion and energy and dynamism who want to take the argument forward and need your evidence, but we're still in this area where attitudes and norms count. And if we can't get out there and make the case to help shift those norms, in the way, Lucas, you described getting the media on board and realizing that even if people might smoke themselves, they don't like sitting in other people's smoke, and they don't like the idea of their kids picking up cigarette butts. If we can change those social attitudes, we can achieve the change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very close to 5 minutes too, and then we have to stop. So I want to give both Lucas and Paul the opportunity to say one sentence to give their final view about this whole issue of these different roles of researchers, practitioners. Lucas?
Thank you for this question, and thank you for this comment of Tamsin Rose. And I just want to add that my first experience with the politicians is that yes, it's good to have a science. It's good to lay it on the table, not off the table as we heard yesterday. But more or less, I was judged by showing that I really believe in it. If I'm just showing this data, it's just an example of this, research, but I'm not such a, that I do not have a strong belief that I was not accepted by the politician. And when I show that I'm really devoted, that's the real thing, that's the very important thing, I was totally differently, assessed by the politician.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to add something about this? Maybe something about biases and Kahneman and Tversky here?
The thing is that it's very hard to change people's opinions when they've got their own personal viewpoints. Other areas I've worked in, currently I'm working in climatology, and the evidence is overwhelming, but people still will not accept it because it is against their interests. A few years ago I went to a meeting of the International Whaling Commission, which was the scientific meeting of them, and I heard scientists making statements they clearly could not possibly believe, but making them. So I think the problem, it's more human nature rather than science. People will reject ideas which are against their best interests.
Okay, we leave it with that and move on to the next part of this plenary session. Thank you very much.